video, you're going to see all the prep that's involved to get a new kitchen ready for a Noc install. What you have to understand about Noc installs is oftentimes you're going to be working in, let's say, in a new building being made, or in this case, a renovation. So you really have to work with the contractor and get a good idea of when that window is going to come to apply the Noc, because there's lots of elements involved. So in this case, what you're seeing now is the old kitchen being removed and a hole being cut in the wall, so it's going to be an open kitchen. All the old plaster is taken off. Once all that's being set up for the new elements, new electricity is going in, new walls are being put in. In this case, the floor is being set up for tiling. So tiling is interesting in the sense that oftentimes in kitchens, the floor is tiled and the walls are tiled, but in this case, you're going to see the walls wrapped with Noc, and the benefit of that is right here. Generally in a kitchen, the walls and the floor are tiled, and as you can see here, tiling is a very long process in the sense that you have to put down the cement, lay the tiles, and this has to dry for a day. So once the cement dries, then you can come in and put on the grout. Now, putting tiles on the floor is a good thing, but on the walls, this same process has to be repeated. So longer time, you have to wait another day for the floor to dry, then you can go in and then do the walls. So this could turn into like a 4-day process, which is time consuming and expensive. So the benefit of putting Noc is you can really wrap the whole kitchen quickly and efficiently and get the same effect and benefits of tiling in most cases. Here now the new kitchen has arrived, so everything is in the boxes. You can see the film that's going to be going on the cabinets, and so this is a full assembly right now. So you really have to think about the time involved to not get the kitchen made. You're really hungry to put that Noc on or schedule it, but this is a time-consuming process to get right. So this is again part of the scheduling that you have to think about long term. So the kitchen to assemble took a full day just to get the cabinets on, then the countertop had to go on. So this was a 1.5 day process of puzzle pieces and put everything together. So again, you really have to think about how that's going to work, not only with putting the kitchen together, but in terms of what else is going on during the renovation. Schedules can often get mixed up or change based on elements that can't be foreseen before you schedule the Noc. So in planning right now, let's say you scheduled the Noc for a Friday and today is Tuesday, then the contractor comes and says, you know what, we're going to have to reschedule for the following week. You really have to be flexible in that schedule. Very important. You can see a lot of things being sawed here, but now that the kitchen's being assembled, super cool. You can see that the cabinet doors have not been put on. They're still in the box on the right, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. Now the area for where the Noc is going to be applied on the cabinet doors has to be prepped. So get an industrial vacuum, get all that dirt off the floor, put a tarp down just for an additional protection for dirt, and then move the table that's going to be used to apply the cabinets onto the tarp. And now we go back to the kitchen where those cabinet doors were, and this is exactly why you want to keep them in the boxes. The guys who are working on the renovation, say building walls or doing electricity, have no appreciation for how clean the cabinet doors have to be in order to apply them with Noc. That's not their job. So they're just drilling holes in the wall and dust is going everywhere. So you really keep those cabinet doors in the box for as long as possible, just to right before they're installed. And this will really help save on cleaning time. So now that the cabinet doors are on the cutting table, one way to cut the material out is you can just simply put them on the table and then create almost like a puzzle, because each panel needs extra bleed. So you really want to map it out. So putting them on the table gets a good idea of how they fit, so you can minimize the material waste. But another option is to simply just write out the measurements on a piece of paper and then map it out. So here, 60 by 100, these are centimeters. Draw it on here, and then you can see which panels go where. So the cabinet doors are different sizes, so you really want to be clever, because material costs can be expensive at Noc. So to minimize those just requires a little work ahead of time to map it out, plan it, and then cut everything precisely. Very important to do this, and having a good cutting table on site is really helpful. Now that the material is ready to cut down and all the measurements are made, always wipe down that table. Again, hyper clean. You're in a construction zone. If you're in your wrap shop, you don't have to do this as much, but this is just the reality sometimes of Noc installs on location. So now, with the measurements, use the grid on the backing paper to really be precise, and especially with these cabinets, is different than, say, wrapping a door or stretching the material around a table where you're going to wrap it and cut it off underneath. These have to be really precise, not only to make it easier to install, but material costs as well. So just minimize those, keep those lines really, really straight, because cabinets are these rectangle shapes, so just having, let's say, 1 inch on either side is just all you need, really, because once you make those relief cuts on the corners, it relaxes down. Always label the panels so you know which panel goes where for efficiency. Once the cabinets are ready for wrapping, they have to be prepped in terms of cleaned, and then primer 94 has to be put on the edges. So you can see how quickly they can be cleaned now. Just a quick wipe down with isopropyl alcohol, and apply the primer 94 on the edges. Always remember with primer 94, it has to dry for about 5 minutes before the material can be applied, but then it has to be applied within an hour for it to be truly effective. So because there's so many cabinet doors being put on, in this case I'm prepping 3 large doors. They take around 10 to 15 minutes each to wrap. Once these are done, I'll get to the next set and prep them the exact same way. And with the kitchen doors finally ready to be wrapped with Dynoc, it's extremely important to determine which side the hinges are going to go on. This will determine which type of cuts are going to be made where, so either reference the drawing that came with the kitchen, or in this case go to the website, and here you can see which side goes with which door. Very important, because if you cut on the wrong side, you're going to have to redo the panel, and that can be very costly and frustrating. And here you can see that the cabinet doors are actually going to be applied on a separate table from the one that was used to cut down the material. And the main reason for this is workflow. So the cutting table area is the prep station, keeps those panels drying with primer 94, for example, or you have room to cut down new materials. And here you can just solely be dedicated to the installation of Dynoc, keeps super hyper focused. You can see that the cabinet door is being placed on a piece of wood so it floats above the cutting room table, and you have some rubber on there so it doesn't move and shift during the install. So now the cabinet doors are ready to wrap, and you'll see all that in part 2 of the series. Thanks for watching. Justin Page. In this video, you're going to see a kitchen cabinet wrapped in real time from start to finish. And what I like about this video is just you can really see the overall process of wrapping with Dynoc in a standard environment. So in this case, it's during a renovation, but you're going to be wrapping Dynoc in offices, on location. So what I did is I have a special table that has a rubber on it so it doesn't shift while I'm wrapping. And I cleaned it with a microfiber towel right before I started. Keep that dirt down around the table. I don't want any specks jumping on. Flip the panel over, made a zipper cut here. Don't have to do any more prep on the liner than that. Cut it, now replace it. Take time to make sure it fits top to bottom. Because I'm wrapping around the sides, you want at least about 1.5 inches on all sides so you get proper wraparound, or let's say almost 4 centimeters just to be safe. But you also don't need much more, so this is all about making precise cuts beforehand. I release the zipper liner. Notice my free hand really locking it in place as I do that, so I don't want the panel to shift. This is a horizontal panel, so flip it over. Come back with a tack cloth one more time. Very important. I'm going to release the liner. I'm not going to release it halfway, which I normally would do, let's say if I'm wrapping a car. But what I want to do is just keep that liner on as long as possible, but just enough as I squeegee, because keeping that liner on keeps the material from sticking, because this is something you don't want to pick back up. So very methodical here. Flip it over. Good habits. Take my tack cloth, wipe it down, flip the material just a little bit, just to flip it over, keep it on, keep it angled off the surface, and then gradually pull as I squeegee. Get a nice rhythm there. And you can see that this is really high gloss material. Every Dynoc material that you're wrapping has a different nature, so I know that this one's particularly stiff. So this means that there's different ways to set up the corners and the edges. So right here, this is the section that's actually going to be not in the visual. It's going to be facing down. So no one's going to see this. So I actually don't have to wrap this side at all. And this is really comes into play of thinking about where the panels are going beforehand so you don't overwrap. The tendency right now is just to wrap all 4 sides completely, but in this case I'm wrapping a ton of shelves for the kitchen, so I want to maximize my time and don't overwrap. And this, obviously, if this was a paying job, it would really mean that I would increase my profits because I could lower my install time and either go home or go to the next job. So here, cutting super flush right to the back, and it's just an exposed edge. And notice I angle my blade and then come back in again just to make sure that everything's off. So bevel it in as much as possible. So you just want to make this a hyper flush cut, because what you want to think about with Dynoc film is this 8 mil thick. So if you cut kind of at a 90-degree angle right there on that edge, it's going to hang, and that might catch an edge if someone grabs it. So if you angle it in, it cuts super, super flush. So just like I did before on the other side, I run my finger, get it going, set. I've made a cut on the corner on that side. I've already cut it away. And then here, I'm just setting up the edge to the next corner. Here, setting up the edges. So just make a 360 at this point. Now that everything's set, it's all about doing the corners. So I'd love to press my finger so I really shape the corners so I can really see where to cut. 45 cut away, nice and clean. And then I'm going to set this up. And for this particular corner, you always want to change your corners based on where they're going. The top one, what I just originally cut, what you can see on the left, there's no corner, so I just cut it flush. But here, really forming around. Once I form it around that top edge, you can see that panel shifts a little bit, but that rubber is tremendous help right now as it keeps that cabinet shelf just really in position. So here I squeegee it down just to my chest, run my finger and just creating flow. As you can see, I got a heat gun on hand just in case I need it. Got my sanding paper, got my dyno book up there, got my hand cleaners, microfiber towels. So I have all the tools that I need on hand really close by if I need to grab them. So now here for the final cut, and this one you can see here, is make that relief cut. That's the final relief cut that I need to make on this entire cabinet. Run my finger and then really focusing and emphasizing of just getting that upper corner super tight. So here you can see my freehand pulls down as I form it around the corner. Some installers use a little heat on that corner, and I didn't have to do that with the wood panel, with that wood material, because it was easier to work with. But this one, because it's so thick and stiff, really pull and make it super snug. Here, because the overlap is going to be facing on the other side, I angle my blade 45 degrees in, flush cut, exactly the same angle as I used on that original long edge. And now here, form it around. So just really form the sides first, the short sides, and now I'm going to form the long side. So you can see my freehand really torquing the material straight down, and I've already cut that inside piece. And then once I form it around the corner, I'm doing what I call the pinch. I'm pinching it and forming it even tighter. So you can see with this one, I'm really going back and forth, but I'm also doing it in very long strokes, very even, getting 100% of the surface at one stroke side to side. That really just lowers my install time. I form it right to the edge, form it back onto the other side. I'm not wrapping it under the cabinet edge, just taking it right to these edges now. And now that I'm there, I can flip the corner around, and this is what's called a standard overlap. But I have to shift it just to get a proper cut, so get good body position. So once I get that, this is what's going to be called a double cut butt joint. So here I'm going to cut it right in the middle, take the top piece off, and now here I'm going to peel this section back and take off the underside. So I pull off the underside, but as wrapping these shelves, I noticed that with this particular material of dyno, it's really stiff on the corner. If I just try to flip it around a little bit, it's going to not butt joint. So if I heat it, it shrinks back a little bit, and you can see my wife pop in the camera just a little bit there. This is during the renovation. Standard normal stuff that you're going to have people come in during your install, so you got to be super focused. And now with the corner done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter the side at the bottom and flush cut it 45 degrees in. So this is the final cut for the underside. So really important. See how I'm going over twice just to make sure it's super flush. So I cut the front now, and I love the fact that that corner's done. So I always try to get the corners done first. Now with this particular corner, it's slightly different. This is going to be on the inside of a section. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a modified corner where I just pick the corner up, cut it a little bit so it's like a standard overlap, but it's not going to be a double cut butt joint. So not quite as much time involved in this one as the double cut butt joint. So you always want to mix and match your cuts on your corners based on visual, but also on time. So if I don't have to do a double cut butt joint, and I could do, let's say, a standard overlap, or maybe even what's called a quick and dirty, I will. So you always want to think about that, because if I can lower my install time on a cabinet by, let's say, even 30 seconds to a minute, and I got 40 of them, well, that's going to add up very quickly. So think short-term seconds, and the seconds add up. So it's a cumulative thing. So once all the edges are cut on that side, I can switch the panel here and just hang it loose. I love working on a table where I can let it hang. And then I'm going to angle my blade 45 degrees in. Really important, cutting flush. If you've ever installed a window perf on a car, it has beveled windows on the free-floating windows. It's the exact same concept, but here there's no body of the car underneath, so I can just keep my blade long. Once everything's cut, always very important to go back over everything and squeegee again. So here I'm squeegeeing in the opposite direction of how I applied the film, and that just really ensures that there's no bubbles, no air. You want firm, proper adhesion on the surface, very important. Got some triangles on my pants, so make sure that those go straight in the trash. And now here I'm just making sure the edges are warm, making sure that double cut butt joint stays put, and didn't do that on the wood series on those bookshelves. Just have to do it on this particular series, so you have to really adapt to the dyno film. And this renovation used probably 6 different types of dyno film and had to adapt to each one. Each one had a unique character that I had to do different types of things during the installation to make sure it stuck properly. Now, once all the edges are set, very important to finish it correctly. So I flip it up, and I love the fact that the table's soft. If the table's hard, I would have to put, let's say, down a towel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand the edges at a 45-degree angle with the 240 grit sandpaper. The reason I'm doing this is I just really want that edge to be hyper flat. Even though I cut at a beveled edge, just the nature of dyno film and the nature of working, let's say, on wood, is it might not cut 100% even. I was probably 99% there, but by sanding it, you get 100%. Very important to do. And a lot of that's, when I sand, a lot of the material is flaking off, so you want to make a mental note that for the next panel you want to clean the table. But if you notice that most of the time I'm sanding so that it goes straight down onto the floor and not onto the work table. Very important to think about that. Always thinking about dirt cleaning during the dyno installation. So I thought about it at the beginning, and now that I'm ending, I'm thinking about it as well, because I'm going to start with another cabinet and repeat. So this dirt is going on the floor, and that's why I have a drop cloth as well. Very important to keep the dirt from the floor from getting in this environment. And now here I set the panel up so I can do that top section there, angle at 45 degrees. So I'm just doing a 360 and making sure I get every one of those exposed edges. And what I love about dyno film is you don't have to go back and edge seal or post heat. That's it. So move on to the next cabinet door. Super cool. You can see it takes about 10 minutes, good steady workflow. And once you get this rhythm, you make some good solid profits and a cool kitchen. Thanks for watching. Justin Pate. In this video, you're going to see brand new cabinet doors wrapped with 3M Dyno gloss film. Really cool stuff. What's very important is a hyper clean space, so you want to wipe down the backing paper just in case there's any specks of dirt on there. Then you want to make sure it fits left to right, top to bottom. Now generally you're not going to have a whole lot of bleed here, so you want to be super precise because this is a one-shot deal. Then you want to create a hinge. In this case it's a zipper cut. Here you're going to use it. This is using a double backing paper cutter, but you can also just use one and cut two stripes. This is all the prep that you need for the cabinet. Just one cut on the backing paper, flip it over, center it, make sure it's in the right position. Once it's good, left to right, top to bottom, super symmetrical, place your forearm there so it doesn't shift while you pull the strip of backing paper off, then lock it into place. Always start in the middle, squeegee right and squeegee left. So just now that that's locked, that creates even tension left to right. So that means the panel is going to flow super smooth. So again, you can see them really taking care of keeping all specks of dirt off the panel because you don't want that to get underneath. With any type of material with dyno, because there's 20 different finishes, each one is different. This one, because it's high gloss, is extremely sensitive to any speck of dirt getting underneath there. It'll really show. So you have to keep your workspace super clean, wipe down with the tack cloth before you squeegee each side. So here you can see keeping the backing paper on. Very important to keep that from touching the surface. You only want to touch the surface once. Coming back to the other side now, and you're going to flip the panel over and repeat. Here, once you flip it over, horizontal, tack cloth, very thorough. Now release the backing paper. Don't release it all the way, just keep it halfway on. Keep it about 10 degrees off the surface, don't let it touch. Then squeegee nice and even left to right. The adhesive does have comply, so you're not going to get bubbles, but it doesn't have control tack, which is the repositionable technology. And because it's a permanent adhesive, once it touches, it's game on. So you want to make sure you only do this once. Now for cutting on the corners, and there's lots of different styles of cutting on corners for cabinets. So in this case, you're going to see one style. We're going to form the material around the edge. Very important to get a super tight seal right there on the top edges. It's formed around the edge of that particular side. So form it down with your finger, go back and forth, cut it flush to the edge right there, and now repeat on the other side. So each type of cut on these cabinets totally depends on which side that corner faces. So in this case, you're going to form it around and around to the side and work that tension away from the corner. Once the tension is worked away from the corner now, you're going to fold this back, cut off the bottom edge here so it's flush. And you always want to cut, this is the side that's on the inside of the cabinet, you want to cut it at a 30 degree angle inside there so it really cuts hyper flush. Once that's cut, fold this corner around nice and even and tight. And then this is what's going to be called a double cut butt joint. This is a high visual corner right here. So I get my blade at a 30 degree angle and I'm cutting through both layers now. I remove excess material on one side. And now I'm going to remove the little piece from the underside right there, and then I'm going to butt joint the pieces. Now you really have to be precise in how it butt joints, so you really want to make sure that those edges really connect. So what you have to appreciate about this type of cut is it looks really good when it's finished because the butt joint basically makes the seam disappear, but it's also very time involved. So this is you only want to do this once on a cabinet. For the other side of the cabinet door, and this is one that's going to be just slightly around the visual, it's going to be a different style of cut. It's going to involve the same prep as the other side, the double cut seam. So you fold one side down, make sure the corner is super snug, then cut with an angle in. You don't want to be 90 degrees, you want to be a little bit about a 45 so it's just flush. And then come in with the top piece and fold over. So same setup right here. Once you get the top corner really flush, then you go down to the flat, get it right to the edge. and then you're going to form the film right around the corner right there. So you got basically like a triangle shape that you flip over on this side. Now, because you want this to be more clean and uniform for the visual, you want to fold it right there. So it's about an 1/8 of an inch fold, so you're going to get a little wrap around there. This is called a modified corner. So once you get that fold, you're going to use that crease in the material as your guide. So really push it so you can see it. Then you come in and cut on the other side. So instead of leaving a triangle, you're leaving almost like a rectangle right there on the side. Very, very clean. And it looks much more visual because it kind of hugs that corner. Nice balance. Modified corner right there. And here's a great shot of how to cut the sides. You want to enter at a 45-degree angle just to get to the edge, and then keep your blade at a 45-degree angle on the side. This will create that really flush cut. Learn this technique from Kenny Ton, great installer in Cleveland. Now come back to where you started. You always never want to start on the corner. You want to start just inside the corner as you just saw, and then finish the corner right here on the other side. 45-degree cut, finish it off nice and clean. And now we get to the bottom 2 corners, and this is when you can do one of the easiest cuts to make. And this is what's called just a standard overlap corner. So you just cut the edges there, always angle your blade in at a 45-degree angle right on the edge, and then simply just fold that triangle around, and then you can leave that triangle. And this is what's going to be actually on the underside of the cabinet door. So that triangle will face down. So you get full coverage, but you don't need to take off that triangle. So very good, clean, efficient corner. Once you get the sides prepped, then this is the last final cut on these sides. Trim it, and they got that 45-degree cut, so it cuts super flush to the surface right there. And here's a shot of the final result, but you're not done with dyno. Very important to finish dyno correctly. So carefully flip it over, make sure it's on a soft surface. I love those tacky rubber right there. And you want to sand the edges. Sanding right now is a 240 grit, and you angle the sanding block at 45 degrees as well. So you're just creating super hyper flush edge right there. Very important for long-term durability. If you have any hanging edges right there, they can be picked up when the door is being opened. So this is really important for just flush surface right there. Now that everything's wiped down, you always want to remove any type of specks that were created during the sanding process. This just helps keep the cutting table clean for the next cabinet door that's coming in. And here you have the shot of the final product. So this was a full coverage door. So all sides were wrapped. 3 different types of corners. You got the double cut butt joint, you have the modified corner, and you have the standard corner. So in the following footage, I want to show you different styles and approaches to wrapping based on where the door is going. So this particular cabinet is the upper cabinet, and this is the top of the cabinet. So instead of doing 2 standard overlaps here, which you just saw, you can actually make a 45-degree cutaway to make it nice and loose, and then simply cut it flush. This edge of the cabinet is going to be literally 1 inch from the ceiling, so there's really no need to wrap it. No one's going to see this. So this is the beauty of dyno, and obviously it helps over wrapping and lowers install time dramatically. So always angle those cuts on those edges 45 degrees in, so it's nice and flush, and then simply cut the other sides. The bottom 2 corners are visual, so there you want to maybe do a double butt joint and a modified overlap, but on that upper section, simply just cut flush. And here you see me bringing over 4 small pieces. What you have to appreciate about these pieces is they're for the drawers, which means that they don't swing open like you just saw for those bigger panels, is that they slide open. This means they have 2 highly visual corners on the upper side. So what you have to do with these is you have to do a double cut butt joint on both sides. This requires a little bit more time, which is interesting. So the smaller the panel, actually a little bit more work involved. And what you can see here is I'm adding actually a little heat on the corners. As I was wrapping these cabinet doors, is I found out with the high gloss, it likes a little heat on those corners just to shrink back a little bit. You'll notice when you're doing dyno installs is every dyno material has a different personality. So just right here on the high gloss, because it's so thick and metallicized, you want to make sure that it just relaxes right there. And then the bottom section gets 2 standard overlaps. So always thinking when you're doing these cabinet doors. And one thing you should notice is that I didn't put the hinges for the cabinet doors on before I did the wrapping. Kept them flat, very important. And now that the cabinet doors are done, those hinges now go on, and then they'll connect to the framework. So very important to keep that sequence because we want to make the installation process as easy as possible. And one thing that's interesting about putting the kitchen back together is you notice that certain sections didn't get coverage right there in the corners, and that wasn't planned. So during the cutting process for the main material for the cabinets, you always want to save your scraps, and this is one of the good reasons why is now I have this extra material on hand and I can fill in that space. So during the cutting process, don't throw those scraps in the trash, save them because you just don't know, because if I had to reorder material right now, this could really screw up the schedule for the renovation. And to remove the cabinet door, simply click it off right there, but notice that my foot is underneath, so once it's clicked off, it doesn't drop right onto the tile and get damaged. Once I carefully set it aside, standard cleaning and wrapping, tuck it deep into the corner, nothing special here. And then once the corner's done, click the door back in and wipe everything down. Want to remove any handprints so it looks super professional. And now with the cabinet doors done, the walls can be wrapped, and that'll be for the next video as well. But before we get to the next video, let's do a wrap up. Prep time was a total of 1 hour, install time 3 hours. Total material used was around 8.8 yards or 8 meters, and the dyno number used was HG High Gloss 1511. Thanks for watching, Justin Pate. In this two-part series of wrapping the walls of this kitchen, one thing that's interesting about dyno is the original idea was to wrap the wall with the wood grain pattern. This was used for the bookshelves as well. But once the kitchen was assembled with the red and the black countertop was put on, my wife was like, you know what, I think the wood might look a little dark. So I took one of the planks for the bookshelf, held it up, and what does she think of the new? Oh, that's supposed to be for the hallway. This is a white textured, and I set it up and she's like, likes this much better. So I held, and what's very important, what you have to think about, especially when you have directional dyno, is which way the client wants the lines to go. So in this case, vertical, no, horizontal, yes. So this really determines how you cut the panels down. And when you do dyno, the clients may change their mind based on what the environment looks like once it starts to get reassembled. So it looks one thing in a swatch book, but once it starts to get together, the clients may change their mind. So you really want to keep that in mind. Prepping the wall, these are just raw walls that have been plastered. So you put primer, wall primer on the walls and wood primer on any type of wood. Now you see here's a good shot of the kitchen itself. You got lots of stuff going on. You got vents, you got corners, you got open areas, so lots of different angles and cuts that you're going to see in this series, which is very exciting because oftentimes you're going to be wrapping these kitchens, and wrapping the walls is really good instead of tiling them because they hold up just as good as tiles, but they can be quicker and easier to install. So did measurements, always really good to not only take measurements, to draw them out, because this really helps see where you're going to get excess material, and maybe this excess material can be used for other areas and it will help save your costs. So in this case, once I mapped everything out very clearly, I saw that that corner area that you saw being painted earlier, I can actually use the excess material around the opening to go there, so this will save on materials costs. So it saves me an entire drop, which is really, really key in terms of saving money and time during the install. So here I'm prepping the panels. Always very important to just prep the panels, mark everything off, label them, cut them so you don't lose the panels as you go, because dyno film does tend to be a little costly on the front end, but what I love about this is it's going to be quick to install. I don't have to tile, so in the end, material costs are about the same if I would have tiled or dyno. Really, really key to think about that. Once I have everything labeled, I'm going to put it away. And what's interesting about this, me cutting down the panels, is actually the day before the install, because this is done during the construction. So you really just take advantage of your windows. So in this case, I cut down the walls, the bathroom, and the office at the same time. And then I'm going to hide them away here in this closet that's done so they don't get dirty the next day once the contractors come back and start doing their thing. So now that I'm ready to do the wall install, prep, take off the outlets, always put masking tape over there for safety, and then clean with isopropyl alcohol. Very important just to wipe it down. Once it's wiped down, you want to come back with primer 94 and cover all the edges. But because the countertop is new, notice that the primer 94 is on a towel, so if anything drips, it goes right onto the towel and not onto the countertop. Very important to think about that for long term. Make sure you get the edges, put some masking tape on the countertop to keep any primer 94 from getting on the countertop. And now it's time to prep the panels. What's interesting about this, I'm just going to have time to do the countertop area, and then I'll do the corners later. So I just prep that area, don't do anything else, because you just want to primer what you need for the install. It's not going to stay good for the next day. And here I'm just going to do these horizontal panels just above the countertop. So I can lay everything out, and so I don't need to cut the liner on a cutting table beforehand and come in. I can actually just do it here on the countertop because they're such small pieces. And what I did beforehand is I cut these to shape, because the countertop is straight at the top and straight at the bottom, and actually silicone is going to go in there later, so it's going to fit in there like a puzzle piece. So that's why the masking tape is there as well, not only for the primer, but it's a low surface energy, so the dyno is just going to slip right into the behind the countertop. So here, just set up my hinge with a zipper hinge, pull it, lock it, then just squeegee right to left, but really trying to make sure that that panel stays straight. So literally it's going slightly underneath the cabinets at the top and it's tucking right to the base of the bottom. Now here I got a raised object, it's the outlet, so I do a cut beforehand. Then I release the liner. Very important. So always nice to cut with the liner on, because if your knife slips, the backing paper kind of acts as a brake if you take the liner off and make your cut, it has a tendency to slip a little bit, and then you might go into the area where you're wrapping. So here, by that relief cut, you see how easily the material relaxes down. Now here, because it's a corner section, I want to make the first piece a 1/8 of an inch overlap around the corner. So here I'm using this really nice tool from Yellow Tools. I cut it nice and clean, top to bottom, nice even tension. So I just cut the Dyno, then I release the liner, and then I'm going to fit it in right into the corner. Very important to do this for long-term durability. If you cut both pieces of Dyno right into the corner, you might come up negative space. Now here, just cut it around the outlet right there, release the masking tape, tuck it in nice and clean, and that had been primer 94 as well, so it's going to stick really good for the long term. And just for flow, always nice to sometimes just pop those outlets back in, and then always seal the deal at the top. So just with the hard edge of squeegee, 45 degrees, squeegee down so it's nice and good for long term. Now here I'm cutting on the side of the countertop, so then it just sticks in there. Later silicone's going to come in. And if you notice here, I'm making a 1-inch cut on the side with the liner, and I'm actually going to remove the backing paper. Now this is abnormal. If you've watched this entire series of Dyno, you know that you're supposed to leave that liner on. But what I did earlier with the first piece is skipped a step. Very important, as a trainer, is to always show skipping steps because you want to show how to solve problems. So in this case, I didn't leave the liner on that first panel, that 1-inch liner. So normally that's what you do for a double cut butt joint. But I know that these panels are straight, so I took advantage of the fact that the edges right here are perfectly straight, and I'm making the butt joint myself right on the edge there. So I pick it up, tuck it in nice and clean, very patient. But once I lock that in, that's actually the beginning of my hinge for the entire panel. So now I'm going to start at one side and work all the way to the other side. So normally you'd start your zipper cut in the middle, then do your normal standard double cut butt joint, but always very good to show different ways to solve problems. So now with this particular piece that I'm putting on, this is different. I have my 1-inch cut on the side, I got my setup for the corner, which is a 4-inch cut on the back, make my zipper hinge in the middle, line it up, set my masking tape on the sides, tuck it into the top, and tuck it into the bottom. So the first two pieces you saw installed, I squeegeed up and down. With that one, I squeegeed side to side. Now here I'm making that 1/8 of an inch cut onto the corner, and instead of using that Yellow Tools tool, I used a ruler. Now here, standard double cut butt joint. So use the masking tape as my guide at the beginning to make sure I just had enough material. Release the liner of the top piece and then squeegeeing it super tight together. So I get a nice, good, tight seal of the top piece coming onto the bottom piece. So I'm squeegeeing towards the section I'm sealing. Then I run masking tape as a guideline here because you always want to make sure that you cut right in the middle of the section that you're doing the butt joint on. So here's right here as my guideline that I just want to be about a 1/4 inch or about a centimeter away. I pull the top piece, pull the liner out, and now I can just butt joint it nice and clean, and it just fits like a puzzle piece. So here's how to do it correct on the other side, just show you how to solve a problem if you forget. Now here, set it up, 1-inch cut on the side, both sides, and make my zipper cut in the middle because I want to make a nice cut in the corner and a nice overlap on the side. So see here, I'm fitting it right to the top. What's interesting about this one is I have 2 outlets on either side. So here, I'm going to come to it, but see it leaving the liner on, and I'm going to make a relief cut right here in the middle. So very important. What's a nice tip here is I'm going to press it with my finger really hard, and by pressing it really hard with my finger, I can see the impression of where I cut. Once I make the cutouts, make a couple relief cuts into the middle to relax the dyno, tuck it in nice and clean to the metal edge right there, and make the angle cut at the top. So it's a really flush cut right to the base of the outlet. Then I'm going to finish the other side. So here I made the same relief cut before. Now tuck it in nice and clean, and here's just a standard cut right into the corner. So the first panel that went on, 1/8 of an inch around the corner, here just cuts right into the corner. Release the liner and the top piece. Now you can see it really fits perfectly right into the corner like a puzzle piece. Really good for long-term durability, essential. And here's a nice shot of the final result. It blends perfectly right into the corner, and here's a shot of the overall install so far over the countertop. So you got your vertical lines, they're nice, plumb and straight. The butt joints blend perfectly into each other. And with this complete, the day is done. So very important to clean up your workspace. Obviously the walls are not fully complete, but sometimes you just can't complete the entire section in one day. That's just the nature of dyno and working in a renovation. You can see that I'm storing all my tools on a scrap of dyno, and that just makes it really easy to carry over into the cutting table area where the rest of the tools are stored. So just a nice tip for that.
And always important at the end of the day to organize your tools. So you definitely want to rush out the door to get home, but here in this case, just very important to take an extra few minutes just so that the next day starts nice and smooth. And as part of the renovation, with other areas being installed with Dino, important to store them away. So next day when the guys for the construction show up, they don't necessarily understand or appreciate Dino, so they might just throw that table around, and if I have to redo it, it can be really costly. So definitely take the time to put it away safely. And we're ready for part 2. Thanks for watching. Justin Pate. In this video, you'll see part 2 of repping the walls of this kitchen. Now here we're at the section where it's the open area right when you walk in, and the areas in orange right now are those excess material that's going to go for the corner of the kitchen. So this is saving the Dino material, really being smart about the excess. So here it's all about prep and really just making sure that you don't throw this in the trash. So prepping it, 4-inch cut toward the top, this is for the ceiling, zipper cut in the middle, that's for the hinge at the start. Then always this panel is reaching the bottom of the floor. Make sure it's clean. You don't want any dirt to jump on underneath the Dino. Then here, make sure it fits top to bottom, left to right. And if you notice the pattern here, you got lines going top to bottom. So very important to make these straight. So not only do you want to make it fit, you also want to make it nice and even. So here, taking the straight edge, make sure the lines line up right in the water level. Now release the zipper piece right there. So now I want to set up that permanent hinge. Notice my forearm's really keeping it in place so it doesn't shift left or right. So I squeeze it right on that top ridge. Now I can go to the top. Got a 4-inch liner cut at the top. You can see there I'm just going to squeegee this section in the middle. Got a section cut for the side as well, so leaving the liner on as long as possible. Don't want it to touch the ceiling. Now here, what's interesting is going to work it into the corner, fit it in there like a puzzle piece, tuck it down nice and clean. But if you notice really cleanly, actually I took off the liner just to show different steps. In the first part of the video, this video series, I showed how to make a butt joint on the fly because I didn't do a 1-inch liner cut. And here, by not releasing the liner beforehand, you can see that it touched the ceiling, and what came off on the ceiling is paint. That's why you always want to be smart by how you prep the liner and leave that liner on before you cut. Then you cut, then tuck it in nice and clean. So very, very important to leave that liner on as long as possible. And here you can see me cutting the section off in that open area with the liner on, and I'm going to roll this up and save this right there for the corner. So this is what I'm going to do for the other side as well. So I don't have to cut any piece right off the roll for that. I'm using that extra material in that dead space. It saves a lot of material costs. And here, cutting 1/8 of an inch on the other side of the corner. This is a very standard cut. So I've cut off 1/8 of an inch there, nice and clean, keeping my blade at a 10-degree angle. If you notice, I'm just putting light pressure on the blade. So I'm just cutting the Dino. You see that the liner is still intact. So that's how light I was cutting, just enough to cut the Dino. Now I release the entire liner and then tuck it right into the corner. It has a 1/8 of an inch overlap right there. Then I'm going to come in with the other piece and cut it straight to the corner. Very important to do that Dino for long-term durability. So once I have that corner complete, I'm going to now cut the sides here. Now no need to wrap around here, so I'm going to angle my blade at 45 degrees in right there, so it cuts almost like a beveled cut. So I start at the corner right there, work into the section right there, nice and flush. Maybe come back and sand it later if it's not perfectly flat. Now here's the section that's going to fit in the corner. So I'm going to cut 4-inch vertical cuts in the liner, standard zipper cut, and then a 4-inch cut at the top. Make sure it fits top to bottom, left to right, and make sure it's straight. Once it's straight, remove the hinge, lock it in place, cut to the top. Very straightforward, almost exactly the same as the other side, except for this side, the corners are going to be different, and I got a cabinet on the left. So I can pick the material up high, push it in right into the corner, then squeeze everything down, cut it flush to the top, very light, not cutting too deep. I don't want to cut the wall because it might flake onto the adhesive. So once that top is done, squeegee down, make a relief cut right for the electrical socket, squeegee down everything nice and flat. And now here's the cut for the corner. Don't want to make that 1/8 of an inch wraparound, just cut it flush right there. Nice light cut using the hard side of the squeegee to keep my knife intact. Once I make that cut, release the film, release the liner, then tuck it nice and clean into the corner. Once that's done, what's slightly different now is these cabinets, and I got to get to that section to make my double cut butt joint. So here, make a relief cut up high, about 30 degrees, so I don't cut short. Once I make that cut, I can cut it right into the base of the cabinet here. Now for this cabinet, it's slightly going to tuck behind, so I'm cutting on the side of the cabinet, so it tucks under about 1/8 of an inch, nice and clean. Once that's done, then I can do the bottom section here. Make another relief cut, takes the hard part of my squeegee, really form it in nice and clean before I make the cut, release the liner, and this fits behind the cabinet as well, just slightly. Once that's done, now it's time to cut the liner 1 inch, so now I can get to the section where it's going to make the double cut overlap. So here you see me release the liner, lock it around, match the masking tape. Once that's set, I can release the liner and do my standard double cut butt joint. Before I do that, I'm going to cut the bottom here, and the silicone's going there, so I don't have to cut it extra special. I just get it right to the corner, leave my blade there as I pull the excess so it doesn't jump. Now once that's set, standard overlap technique. Push the underside with my squeegee and then form it with my finger. Now cut it straight top to bottom, in this case using a ruler. Release the dyno underneath, release the liner, then butt joint. Very standard. Once you get the hang of this, it works really, really good. Here's a shot of the final result, and you don't see it, and that's the whole point. Really good stuff if you do it correctly. Now we're to the corner. What's interesting about the corner now is there's lots of stuff going on. Silicone's going to go on this corner. You can see that it doesn't connect with the wall. It's a separate piece. So no need to do that 1/8 of an inch wraparound. You're going to just tuck it right into the corner and cut. So very standard. Same thing at the bottom. Notice I put masking tape on the countertop. Very high energy there. So by using masking tape here, I can just really make a standard cut. I don't have to leave the liner on. So just really, this is almost just like wrapping a normal wall here. So it's really nice. 90-degree angle there because I'm going to make a sanded cut at the very end. Wrap the piece on the side, keep the liner on so it tucks in nice and clean, just like what you saw earlier in the other corner of the room. For this corner, no need to wrap it 1/8 of an inch around, which you normally do, which I did on the other side of the room, because the silicone is going here as well. So it's very, very important, especially if you're doing a renovation with a contractor who's doing a lot of the work, is have a good communication. Where is silicone going? Is it going to the bottom here? Yes. So then you do different types of cuts. And this really helps save on installation time so you don't overwrap. Here's a good shot of the sanded corner here. Once you sand top to bottom, you really just pay attention to that piece on the right side. Once it relaxes, you know that you've cut deep enough. And if there's any raw edges right there, you just sand it and smooth it out. Now for this next piece, this is going right next to the corner. So 4-inch cut on the right, 4-inch cut on the left, and then do your standard horizontal cuts. Zipper in the middle, 4-inch cut from the top. What's interesting, awkward position. So here is slightly standing on the countertop. So I have nice soft shoes on so I don't scratch it. I'm not going to wear hard shoes. Then standard cut into the corner. No silicone going here, so it's just going to be a final cut and finish right there, flat and steady. So primer 94 on the edge for sure. At the bottom of this section, there's actually a really big gap between the countertop and the wall. So tucked it in just past the top of the countertop, then cutting it flush to the edge of the countertop so it drops deep behind here. So when you're standing in the kitchen, you got full coverage. And it's always a good idea, once the kitchen walls are complete, just save the measurements. You're probably never going to get this type of shape again, but you never know. Maybe the client wants to redo the kitchen in 2 or 3 years. Instead of measuring again, then you just break out these envelope and you're good to go. It saves a lot of time. And here's a good shot of the silicone going in. So you got a gray at the bottom, white at the top. So that's why you make sure you don't overwrap, because let the silicone do the wrapping for you. And here's a shot of the final result of the walls completed. It really matches nicely with the red cabinets. And once the window goes in, it's really going to make it nice and bright in there. You can see the wrapped vent for the stove as well. Could have tiled this, but tiling would have taken a couple days longer to install, maybe added a little bit more to the expense. So dyno, super quick, easy, straightforward. And let's get to the wrap up. Prep time on the walls was 1 hour. Install time 2 hours. Total material used 11 yards or around 10 meters. And the specific product number for dyno was SI1611. Thanks for watching. Justin Pate.